All right, I do apologize for missing class on Monday. An emergency popped up just that day. I made my morning class. I missed your class, and then I was back for the afternoon class. So there was an activity posted on Angel for you to take a look at. If you have not, if you will do that as soon as possible, I would appreciate it. Our focus has been on the last couple classes on typography, and I asked you to sort of do some exploration as a different way to learn a material and actually apply it in creating some posters or little sheets that illustrate some of the principles about typography. Now what I would like to do is sort of give my take on typography that will hopefully complement everything that you've studied on your own and learned on your own. One of the best descriptions I've heard of typography is a simple one. All right. And at first it kind of sounds a little silly, but if we think about it a little bit more, I think it actually is very descriptive. And what we're going to do is after we look at this, after I make the statement, we're going to look at it in more detail and see how it really applies. And the description I heard about typography is typography are the clothes that words wear. All right. So typography equals clothes for words. That may sound a little silly or whatever, but I think it is very relevant. Let's think about that. Let's think of what are some of the reasons that you wear the specific clothes that you do on any given occasion. Number one, clothes need to be functional. In other words, they have to work, right? It wouldn't do me any good to try to squeeze into a small t-shirt, all right? Or for my shoes, a size 6 shoe or something like that. It has to work, all right? And it has to be functional, and it has to get the job done, all right? And the job done for clothes is, keeping us protected, keeping us warm, and so on down the line. So clothes need to be, first of all, functional, all right? They, can't be made of such a flimsy material that, when you go to stretch the shirt across your shoulders that, it rips apart or something like that. I guess for everyone but Hulk Hogan, I guess he has the exception because his biceps, I'm sure, and his chest burst through the flimsy t-shirts, but that's a special case. So clothes need to be functional, all right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through this criteria, then we're going to see how it applies to typography and what you can do in typography to achieve these goals. Because clearly, there's more to clothes than being functional, right? If all clothes had to be was functional, that is, keep you warm, keep you dry, and so on, there would be like one clothing store in the world that would sell, I don't know, a black t-shirt, jeans, and shoes, right? And maybe a jacket for the winter.
Like China used to be.
Exactly. All right? So the point is that obviously, at least in our society, there's more to that than function. What are some of the other things about clothing other than just the sheer functionality of it?
Attractive?
Yeah, the appearance. I'll say attractive appearance. Now, to be sure, different people have different standards as to what's attractive and what isn't attractive, but most people dress, in something that they like, at least on some level. All right? So, for it to look good is another aspect of clothing.
To be self-expressive.
Expression. All right? Says something. All right? In other words, that is, what's on the t-shirt?
It's an Ozfest concert.
An Ozfest concert t-shirt. All right? That says something about you. Baseball hat says something something about you. Everything that a person wears and all that says something about themselves. Does it say everything? Am I saying to judge people by their clothes? Of course not. But it does say something. All right? People picked the clothes that they wore deliberately. And they made some process to decide what to wear every single day, if you think about it. And that choice tells you something about them. I'm not saying something in a judgmental sense, but it says something about that person. Even if the person literally got up in the clothes that they fell asleep in and came to school, that would tell you something about them as well. All right? Contrary to belief, I didn't do that. All right? But you get the idea. That tells you something about the person. So there is an aspect of expression to clothing as well. You know? And, you know, I mean, in our society, that's a big deal. You know, that's the whole thing of fashion and getting people hooked on things so that they do it. Again, it's clearly beyond being functional, and it's clearly even beyond looking attractive or looking okay. All right? There is an element of expression into it. What's another use of clothing, another aspect of clothing and the clothing that we wear? Feel free to think out of the box, whatever the box is. Well, I can think of two big points, I guess. Two big points. And in a way they're related, but I'm going to talk about them separately. All right. Number one, with clothes there's a sense of appropriateness. Appropriateness. Is that spelled right? Is that even? I'll just make it appropriate.
You got it right.
All right. I thought so. It just didn't look right. There's a sense of appropriateness. In other words, what you wear in one situation is not necessarily appropriate in another situation. And that can be for a lot of different reasons. You know, what you wear in the summer, for example, probably isn't appropriate for today because it's too cold out. All right? It goes beyond that, though. What you wear to dinner with friends, let's say, at a casual, at a casual place, would be different than what you would wear on your wedding day. All right? What you wear if you are playing tennis is different than what you are going to wear if you are skiing. All right? And on and on and on and on. All right? There's a sense that the clothing that you wear is not necessarily, we can't make a universal statement to say this is good clothing or this is bad clothing, but what we can say is, yeah, that's probably pretty good if you're doing this, or yeah, that's pretty good if you're doing that. In other words, tuxedo probably looks great, but it would kind of be odd if I came in a tuxedo. All right? It wouldn't, I don't know, I guess there'd be nothing wrong with it. I'd still be the same person, and I'd still be talking, but, it might seem odd, and it might seem a little inappropriate, the term overdressed. By the same token, if I was getting married and I showed up like this, well, it would be inappropriate as well. So there's a sense of what is appropriate, and what is appropriate isn't necessarily an absolute, but it's based on a situation. All right? In other words, for one situation, one thing is appropriate. For another situation, something else is. The last thing I will put in there is that there's sort of a wild card. All right? And I will just call this clothing. Some clothing has special meaning. What I'm thinking of, for example, would be a police officer's uniform. All right? That instantly tells you something about that person. All right? A referee in a football game, they wear different clothing than the players. All right? A goalie in soccer wears different clothing than the other people on the team. All these things give additional meaning. All right? Even football players. The home team wears different uniform than the opposite team. Why is that? Well, could you imagine if everyone was wearing a white jersey with white helmets. It'd be functional. The helmets would protect their head and their pads would protect it. Attractive? Well, I don't know about that. Expression? Well, I don't know about that. Appropriate for the situation? Yeah. But you'd be losing that meaning. Mainly, is that guy running at me a teammate, or is he on the other team? Right? Or if you're playing basketball, gee, do I pass to this guy or do I don't? You know? Or if you're a spectator. So, clothing can, in certain circumstances, convey special meaning. You know? And again, this goes back all the way back. You know, religious people wear different clothes because that sets them apart from everyone else. You know, a priest or a minister will dress differently. All right. What was the other one I was thinking of? A judge. A judge dresses different. All right, with the robes and all that. That conveys something. When you go to commencement ceremony, when you graduate, you dress in a certain way because that has a special meaning. So all these things relate to, I would say, the generalized purpose of clothing. All right? If we're going to define why there's clothing and the reasons why people choose the clothes that they wear, in general terms, there's these 5 categories. Can anyone think of another idea? That's all the ones I could think of, but that doesn't mean that you can't think of a different one. All right. Now let's go and let's apply this to typography. All right? Because we're not here to talk about clothes. All right? Functional. Well, we talked about the basic function of clothing, keep you warm, keep you protected, and so on. What is the basic function of typography, if you're going to boil it down to one thing? Communication, message.
Eligible.
Legible. Yeah, legible. All right. So, legible, communicate, message. All right. That certainly is the basic function of typography. And it better achieve that. Right? If it doesn't achieve that, then your typography is way off base. All right? But obviously, just like there is more with clothing than just functional, there's more to typography. Let's talk about legibility. What are some of the things that affect the legibility of your words, of your fonts and your text? Size. All right.
Intended use.
Intended use?
Yeah, in my poster I did a difference between like Times New Roman and the
Okay. And can you clarify what you mean a little bit more?
One's more for printed text, it works better and it's not as easily read on a monitor, and the other one was optimized for the computer screen.
Excellent. So, if I can sort of paraphrase what you're saying there, is that the font face matters, and not only does it matter, not only are it's not so simple as to say certain fonts are more readable than other fonts, is that certain fonts are readable under certain situations, and other fonts are more readable under different situations. So let's go and let's pull up Word and let's play with fonts. What are the 2 fonts that you said? That was, by the way, an excellent poster. I would urge everyone to take a look at that one. Let's pull up Word here. Or we can just sit and watch it. You compared Times New Roman and what was the other one?
Verdana.
Verdana? Okay. Oh my goodness.
It's just not going to let you select that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it opens up Visio. I should put like a link on my videos on YouTube that, you know, if you enjoy these videos and want to help buy me a new computer,
Please donate.
yeah, please, yeah, and have a little PayPal.
You should start putting ads in front of your videos to make money.
I have debated that. I'm not sure the ethics of that.
Here, accepted PayPal.
But yeah, the thought did cross my mind, but I'm not sure. Okay, so let's go and let's type in a phrase. Let's type in Lorain County Community College, and we'll set it in the 2 fonts that you specified. And I'm going to make these big, just so I can point some things out. Maybe not that big. Let's make it that big. And you picked Verdana?
Yes.
And then Times New Roman. Yeah, right. Wow. Couldn't pick something to start with A, huh? There's Verdana.
Arial was too commonplace.
Yeah, right. What, have you ever seen hipster Little Mermaid? She wants to be called Helvetica because Ariel is too mainstream. And the other one you picked was Times New Roman.
Yes, you can type it if you just start typing.
Yeah, thank you.
Just say that.
There you go. All right. First of all, let's notice these. These are different font faces, the kinds of fonts. We usually abbreviate by saying font, but font faces is the full term. Now, these are represented in 2 distinct kinds of font faces, serif and sans serif. Verdana, the one up here, is a sans serif font. Times New Roman is a serif font. What does that mean? The serif font has these little thingies at the end of the letters that are called serifs, where the sans serif font doesn't have those little things. Okay? So, what was your conclusion about the usage of one versus the other from your poster?
That if it's something that's going to be printed, whether it's going to be initially viewed on a monitor or not, you should go Times New Roman. But if it's like a web page or if it's intended to be read on a screen, you should go as Verdana.
Okay. Typically, this is often used with printed stuff. This is often used with stuff that is displayed on the screen. All right? There's sort of another guideline with this, is that even if you're talking about stuff on the screen, sans or serif fonts might be good for like larger type, like headings, whereas sans serif is used for smaller type. You can see a lot of websites sort of follow that formula. Let's go to the Wall Street Journal website, and I assume they still do it that way. They did last time I looked. There are the weirdest noises here.
Might be time to upgrade the card.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Is that what that even was?
Yeah, I think there was something stuck on the bottom or the wheel was out long.
They ran someone over, maybe. I don't know. All right. Let's look at the Wall Street Journal, and you'll notice that headlines are in serif fonts. Text of article are in sans serif fonts. Those little serifs actually help readability. All right? They actually help people identify letters and read things and all that, provided they're at a big enough size or a good enough resolution. For smaller text, those serifs would kind of get in the way. All right? It's kind of the bottom line for it. So, if you're creating something for a screen, all right, the smaller text, like the bulk of your content, would likely be in sans serif. Your headlines or headings might be serif. Do keep in mind that these are guidelines that I'm talking of. These are general guidelines. But, I mean, it's things that, there's research behind them that says that this is the case. It's not just like someone spouting an opinion. All right? So, that's a good point. Printed things, bigger type, serif fonts, smaller type, sans serif fonts. So the size, the font face, and the combination of the size and the font face influence legibility. All right? So, when we talk about legibility, again, so far we have size, font, and the combination of the two. What's something else that affects the legibility of some text?
Colors.
Colors. The higher contrast you have, the easier it is to read. So in other words, if I was going to put black text on a white background, that's pretty easy to read. All right? Actually, white text on a black background is also pretty easy to read. The only little catch is, from what I understand based on studies,
That's really unpleasant.
the eye sort of tends to fatigue after a period of time. So if you're reading just a short piece of something, it's legible, but if you're reading a lot of stuff, yeah, it unpleasant. I'm sure for some people it's worse than others, but yeah. So if you're talking about reading a lot of text, then you're right. Then it becomes fatiguing or unpleasant.
Please don't bring back DOS.
Please don't bring back DOS? Okay. All right. Did it ever go away?
No.
No.
Technically it's dead, but it's still there.
Exactly. So the colors and the color combinations come into play. Obviously, either of those two are superior than something like yellow on green, all right, or orange on yellow, or something like that, where there's not sufficient contrast between the two. There's a few things to consider with this. First of all, you're not only talking about legible for your average person, that there are some people that are colorblind. All right? And if you are colorblind, then it's more than just a simply annoyance. It may prevent you actually from reading. Now, the one thing to keep in mind about colorblindness is it's not like colorblind people see in black and white. All right? A lot of people think, oh, you're colorblind, it's like your life is an old movie and you see everything in black and white. It's not the case. There's a variety of different kinds of colorblindness. There's actually a whole bunch of them. All right? And a common one is not being able to distinguish red and green. All right? So be aware of that, and be aware that you want to keep it contrasting to make it legible, both for people that can see and for people that are colorblind. Now, does this mean that all your text should be black on a white background? No. But you know what? You're not going to be wrong too often if you do that. All right? To be sure, we could probably think of occasions where black text on a white background would be boring and wouldn't serve the overall message of the site. It might be legible, but it might not be attractive, or it might not express what wants to be expressed. But you know what? If you're talking about like a standard business piece of multimedia, a standard business webpage, you're not going to go too wrong with black and white. All right? So if you got a better idea, go with it. If you don't, do that, and it'll work. What might be a case where you would not want black and white? Can you think of an example if you're developing such and such web page where you would not want, or you might use something other than black and white?
History webpage.
History web page?
Yes, if you're doing documentation, it would look better if it's like the color that the Constitution looks, or
Okay.
old documents look.
Okay. So you might, if you were doing something, you might, something that had an antique look, like a history, you might want to have sort of an antique sepia tone or whatever. Can anyone think of another example?
If you're doing a website for an Italian restaurant, you might want to use red and green.
Yeah, you might use the colors for the Italian restaurant, red and green. The classic one I always have is again, and every single one of you can tell me what color this site is going to be, even if you've never been on it. What color is the website for Barbie? Probably pink. All right, pink probably plays very heavily into that. In that case, legibility becomes less of an issue, or not less of an issue, because you still want it to be legible, but those other things come into play as well. Now, we're talking about using color. One thing to remember is that the fact that there's people that are colorblind doesn't mean that you don't use color. All right? What it means is you're careful about your color choices, and you try to express the meaning in a different way as well. For example, if I was a pharmaceutical company and I had some prescription medicine that I was talking about, and I wanted to put a warning, do not take more than 3 over a 24-hour period, whatever. If I want to put some sort of warning on my website, I might want to make the warning red, right? Because red is sort of like, at least in our culture, hey, this is important, this is a warning. Now, what if someone has red color blindness then? What could you do in addition to making it red to make it stand out for someone that's colorblind? They're not going to be able to distinguish the red.
Put it on an appropriate background.
Maybe put it on a different background. Maybe make it bold, italics, bigger font. Probably not a smaller font if you want it to stand out. But the point is you can use color along with other things to achieve the same goal. So, for example, if I wanted a warning and I made it red and bold, someone that's not colorblind is going to really see that stand out because it's going to be red and bold. Someone that is colorblind, it'll still stand out because they may not be able to distinguish the red, but they will be able to identify the bold. They will be able to see that it's bold. So use color along with other things. I'm going to look real quick. Here is a web page that allows you to see what a page would look like if you have different sorts of color blindness. So let's go to put this on. This takes a while to work because it essentially processes every page. But I went to this page, which is a colorblind web page filter, and I can specify the web page that I want to visit. And I can specify the kind of color blindness. So, protanopia is red-green color blindness. And there's a whole list of the different kinds of color blindness that you may have. Red-green, another kind of red-green, blue-yellow, and so on down the line. Let's go in and let's put in an address of a page, and let's see what this page looks like. This is a page of a well-known web designer, Jeffrey Zeldman. So let's look what his page looks like when filtered through the colorblind filter. It does take a while to load it because it has to do some processing on its end before it's able to display it.
Wikipedia would have no trouble.
Yeah, but it wouldn't demonstrate anything. All right. There's how the page looks like if you had red-green color blindness. Let's go and let's see what the page really looks like. All right. That's how it would look like for people that don't have color blindness. This is for people that have red-green color blindness.
What's the difference?
Well, notice like this banner up here is orange.
What's the same to me?
Oh, maybe you have red-green color blindness then.